7 years had passed since humanity's departure, and the galaxy was beginning to understand the true cost of their decision. What had seemed like a necessary action to protect galactic stability was now revealed as the greatest strategic mistake in galactic history. On Valkyrie Prime, Prime Minister Zethtok stood before the emergency session of the Planetary Council, delivering news that no one wanted to hear. The massive crystalline beings that made up the Valkyrie leadership hummed with distress as the economic data was presented. "Our industrial output has decreased by 60%, Zethtok announced, his crystalline voice carrying undertones of despair. "The efficiency algorithms that humans developed for our manufacturing systems are failing without proper maintenance. Our engineers cannot recreate the improvements that human consultants made to our production lines." Council member Velthera pulsed with angry red light. "We were told that human dependency was minimal. We were assured that their contributions could be easily replaced. We were wrong," Zethtok admitted. "Human innovation wasn't just helpful. It was fundamental to our modern economy. Without their creative problem-solving and their willingness to challenge established methods, our entire industrial base is stagnating." The situation was even worse than the public knew. Valkyrie military ships were experiencing system failures because human-designed repair protocols had never been fully understood by Valkyrie engineers. Their space stations were becoming increasingly unreliable as human-improved safety systems degraded without maintenance. On Thessia, High Scholar Morden faced similar problems. The Thessian collective had built their reputation on scientific advancement, but their research programs were collapsing without human collaboration. "The humans brought something to our research that we cannot replicate," she explained to the YR Science Council. "They approached problems from directions we would never consider. They asked questions we thought were irrelevant. They combined seemingly unrelated concepts in ways that produced breakthrough discoveries. Surely we can continue our research without them," protested Research Director Kilvano. "Can we?" Mordan displayed the latest research statistics. "In the 7 years since human departure, we have made 0 major discoveries, 0 breakthrough technologies, 0 paradigm-shifting innovations. Our laboratories are producing incremental improvements to existing technology, but nothing truly new." The truth was humbling. The Thessians had always prided themselves on their logical, methodical approach to science. But humans had brought chaos to that order, creative chaos that had accelerated Thessian research by centuries. Without that chaotic element, Thessian science had returned to its natural pace, slow, steady, and ultimately stagnant. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, the consequences of humanity's absence were even more dramatic. 3 aggressive species had expanded into regions that humans had once helped stabilize. The Krillian Horde, the savage clans of Mordak, and the Void Reapers had all begun territorial expansion wars that were consuming entire star systems. Commander Jaxtool of the Centauri Defense Force found himself fighting a losing battle against Krillian raiders. His forces were outnumbered and outgunned, but more importantly, they lacked the tactical innovation that human military advisors had once provided. "Send another distress call to the Galactic Council," he ordered his communications officer. "Sir, this is the 5th distress call this month. The Council keeps saying they're monitoring the situation and considering intervention." Jaxtal knew the truth. The Council was paralyzed. Without human peacekeepers and human diplomatic solutions, they had no effective way to deal with aggressive expansion. Humans had been the galaxy's firefighters, rushing to conflict zones and finding creative solutions that other species couldn't imagine. Now the galaxy was burning, and no one knew how to put out the fires. Back on Earth, Daeho Kim sat in his study, reading the intercepted communications that still reached them despite the supposed communication blackout. As humanity's former ambassador, he maintained unofficial contacts throughout the galaxy, and the news was both tragic and ironic. The Mandorian Trade Federation has lost 40% of its shipping routes, he reported to Sujin Lee during their weekly conference call. Pirates and raiders are targeting trade convoys that were once protected by human escort services. "And the research institutes?" Sujin asked. "Stagnant. The Thessians haven't made a major discovery since we left. The Velkari have actually regressed technologically as their human-improved systems fail. Even the Gorillans are struggling. Their mining operations are far less efficient without human logistics support. Sujin nodded grimly. Any word from the council itself? Unofficial channels suggest there's serious discussion about repealing the Exile order. Several member species are pushing for formal reconsideration. The economic damage is becoming impossible to ignore. This was perhaps the most ironic development of all. The galaxy that had exiled humanity for being too aggressive was now suffering from the absence of human aggression, human willingness to confront problems directly, to challenge established thinking, and to take risks that other species avoided. All of this had become the invisible foundation of galactic civilization. Dr. Hiran Yoon, monitoring Galactic communications from her position at the Deep Space Listening Post, was documenting the steady decline of galactic scientific cooperation. Species that used to collaborate freely are now hoarding their research. Without humans serving as neutral intermediaries, old rivalries and suspicions are resurging. The humans had been the galaxy's diplomats, mediators, and peacekeepers not because they were naturally peaceful, but because they were naturally problem solvers. When conflicts arose, humans had found ways to resolve them. When species couldn't work together, humans had built bridges between them. Now those bridges were gone, and the galaxy was fragmenting. The most telling example came from the Outer Spiral Research Consortium, a multi-species project that had been studying dark matter phenomena. Without human coordination, the project had dissolved into competing national efforts that accomplished far less than the unified approach had achieved. The irony is overwhelming, observed Jinsu Park, analyzing the galactic news feeds. They exiled us for being disruptive, but our disruption was exactly what held their civilization together. Meanwhile, the first unofficial contact attempts began reaching Earth. Not from the Galactic Council, but from individual species desperate for help. The messages were carefully worded to avoid violating the Exile order, but their meaning was clear. The Centauri Defense Force, hypothetically, wondered if human tactical expertise might be available through intermediaries. The Thessian Science Council sent academic papers with theoretical questions that were obviously requests for research collaboration. The Velkari Trade Confederation submitted philosophical inquiries about manufacturing efficiency that were really requests for technical assistance. Sujin read through the latest batch of disguised requests with a mixture of sadness and vindication. They're all asking for help, but none of them can officially admit it. They can't acknowledge that exiling us was a mistake without admitting that their entire decision-making process was flawed. What do we tell them? Asked Taiwan Cho. Nothing, Sujin replied firmly. We honor the exile they imposed. If they want to change it, they need to do so officially, through proper channels with full acknowledgement of what they did. But privately, Sujin knew that even if the galaxy did officially invite humanity back, the answer would probably be no. Humanity had found something better in the void between galaxies. They had discovered civilizations that welcomed human innovation instead of fearing it. They had built technologies that surpassed anything the old galaxy possessed. The exile had transformed humanity from galactic supplicants into intergalactic pioneers. Why would they want to go back to being junior partners in someone else's civilization when they had built their own? As she watched the latest reports of galactic decline scroll across her screens, Sujin felt a complex mix of emotions. There was no satisfaction in seeing former neighbors struggle, but there was a grim justice in watching them learn the true value of what they had thrown away. The galaxy had wanted humanity gone, and humanity had obliged them. Now they were learning what gone actually meant, and the lesson was far more expensive than anyone had imagined. The massive chamber stretched before Daeho Kim like a cathedral built for giants. Towering alien forms surrounded him on all sides, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and deep rumbles that the translation devices turned into cold, clinical words. He stood at the center of it all, representing not just Earth but all of humanity's hopes and dreams among the stars. The verdict had been expected, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. The Galactic Council, has reached its decision, announced the Velkari speaker, its crystalline voice cutting through the chamber's noise. Regarding the human species and their home system designated as Sol 3, also known as Earth, Deho kept his face calm, even as his heart pounded. Behind him in the gallery, young Min Park sat with the other human observers. The military attaché's jaw was tight, his hands gripped into fists on his knees. They both knew what was coming. After careful consideration of evidence presented over the past solar cycle, this council finds that humanity poses a significant threat to galactic peace and stability. Their aggressive expansion, their unpredictable nature, and their refusal to accept established galactic norms make them incompatible with civilized space. The chamber erupted in a mixture of agreement and dissent. Some species hooted their approval, while others remained silent. The massive gorillans beat their chests in what Deho had learned meant agreement. The floating jellyfish-like Medusae pulsed with bright colors that his translator couldn't interpret. Therefore, the Velkari continued, by a vote of 47 in favor, 12 against, and 6 abstaining, the Council hereby orders the complete exile of humanity from all galactic territories, trade routes, and communication networks. Young Min stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. Security drones immediately focused on him, but he just shook his head and sat back down. There was no point in protesting. The decision was made. Humanity will have 10 standard galactic years to withdraw from all colonies, outposts, and settlements beyond their home system. During this time, they will be permitted to maintain minimal contact for the purpose of organizing their departure. After this period, any human presence in galactic space will be considered an act of aggression. Deho finally spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. The human delegation acknowledges the Council's decision. We request formal documentation of all territories we must evacuate and a detailed timeline for withdrawal. The Velkari's head tilted, in what might have been surprise. You do not protest? You do not demand a review or appeal? No, Deho said simply. We understand your position. We will comply with your ruling. This seemed to confuse several council members. The Thessian collective's representative, a tall gray being with too many joints, leaned forward. The humans accept exile without argument. This is unexpected. We are a practical people, Deho replied. When we are not wanted somewhere, we leave. We thank the Council for the 10 years to organize our departure. That is very generous. The sarcasm was so subtle that the translation devices missed it entirely, but several of the human observers smiled grimly. On Earth, 12 hours later, Sujin Lee stood in the command center of the Global Space Initiative, watching the live feed from the Council chambers. Around her, dozens of screens showed data streams from human colonies across the galaxy. Ships in transit, mining operations, research stations, diplomatic outposts, all of it would have to be abandoned. Or would it? Ma'am, called Taewan Cho from his station. We're receiving the official exile documentation. It's comprehensive. They want us out of everything. Sujin nodded slowly. She had expected this day might come. Humanity's rapid expansion had made the established powers nervous. Their willingness to fight when threatened, to take risks that other species avoided, to push boundaries that had remained fixed for millennia. It all added up to a species that made others uncomfortable. Activate Protocol 7, she said quietly. The Yao command center went silent. Protocol 7 was theoretical, a contingency plan that most hoped would never be needed. It was the plan for what to do if humanity was ever cut off from galactic civilization entirely. Are you sure, Director? Asked Hiran Yoon, the xenobiologist who had spent years building relationships with alien scientists. Once we start Protocol 7, there's no going back. They've made their choice, Sujin replied. Now we make ours. Send the activation codes to all human settlements, all ship captains, all colony administrators. Every human in the galaxy needs to know that as of right now, we're on our own. The message went out on quantum channels, faster than light, reaching the farthest human outposts within hours. On Kepler 442b, Administrator Bo-Ra Kim read the message twice before calling her senior staff. On the mining station orbiting Wolf 359, Captain Min Ho Jung immediately began calculating how much equipment they could salvage before evacuation. But the most important message went to the deep space research facilities, the ones working on projects that other species had deemed impossible or impractical. Ships that could travel between galaxies, habitats that could exist in the void between stars, technologies that could make humanity completely independent of galactic infrastructure. Sujin walked to the main display screen, showing a map of human presence across the galaxy. Red dots marked colonies, blue dots showed research stations, green dots indicated trade posts and diplomatic missions. There were thousands of them, representing millions of human lives and centuries of work. 10 years, she said to her assembled staff. They're giving us 10 years to pack up and leave. She turned to face them, her expression hard as steel. We'll be gone in 5. 5 years? Taewon looked stunned. Director, that's impossible. The logistics alone. Not impossible, Sujin interrupted. Just very, very difficult. But that's what humans do best, isn't it? The impossible. She walked back to her command chair, her mind already racing through the complexities of the largest evacuation in galactic history. But it wasn't just an evacuation she was planning. It was a transformation. They think they're punishing us, she said softly, more to herself than to her staff. They think exile means defeat. She smiled then, and there was something in that smile that would have worried the Galactic Council if they could have seen it. They have no idea what they've just unleashed. Outside the command center windows, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its children were about to embark on a journey that would reshape not just their destiny, but the destiny of multiple galaxies. The Council had voted to exile Earth, thinking they were removing a threat. Instead, they had just given humanity the greatest gift possible: complete freedom to become what they were truly meant to be. 2 years had passed since the exile order, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity's response was unlike anything they had expected. Instead of angry protests or desperate pleas for reconsideration, humans had simply begun the most organized withdrawal in galactic history. Min Ho Jung guided his massive cargo ship, the New Soul, through the asteroid belt of the Centauri system. Behind him stretched a convoy of transport vessels, each one loaded with equipment, machinery, and materials that had once been part of the human mining operation here. What amazed him was how methodical it all was. "Captain," called his navigation officer, So Young Kim, "the Velkari monitoring station is requesting an inspection of our cargo." Minho almost laughed. "Tell them they're welcome to inspect. We're only taking what belongs to us." That was the thing that seemed to surprise the galactic community most. Humans weren't stealing anything. They weren't sabotaging the facilities they left behind. They weren't even taking things that other species might consider jointly owned through trade agreements. If there was any doubt about ownership, humans simply left it behind. But what they did take, they took completely. On Kepler 442b, Bo-Ra Kim stood on the observation deck of the colony's central habitat, watching the systematic dismantling of everything humans had built on this world. The biodomes, the manufacturing plants, the residential complexes, all of it was being carefully taken apart piece by piece. "It's actually impressive," said her assistant, Jin-Woo Park. "We're not just packing up and leaving. We're erasing every trace that we were ever here." Bo-Ra nodded. The orders from Earth had been clear. Leave each world exactly as humanity had found it. If they had terraformed a planet, they were to reverse the process where possible. If they had built cities, they were to remove them entirely. If they had altered the ecosystem, they were to restore it. "The survey teams confirm it," Jin-Woo continued. "When we're done here, the planet will be exactly as it was before the first human ship arrived. No buildings, no roads, no infrastructure, nothing." "That's the point," Bo-Ra replied. "We're not leaving them anything to remember us by. When they write the history of this world, the human chapter will be a blank page." But Bo-Ra knew something the aliens didn't. Humanity wasn't just erasing their presence. They were taking their accumulated knowledge with them. Every technological advancement they had made, every scientific discovery, every innovation that had made human colonies successful, all of it was being carefully preserved and transported. The galaxy was starting to notice the economic effects. The Thessian Collective had built their latest research stations using human construction techniques. Without human engineers to maintain them, the stations were beginning to show problems. The Velkari had integrated human logistics algorithms into their trade networks. Now their shipping efficiency was dropping steadily. Woojin Seo, Earth's chief diplomat, sat in his office reviewing the latest reports from across the galaxy. His desk was covered with requests from alien governments, not for humans to stay, exactly, but for them to honor existing contracts a little longer, to provide technical support for just a few more months, to please reconsider the timeline for withdrawal. Sir, his aide, Hyojin Lee, entered with another stack of communications. The Mandorian Health Ministry is asking if we can delay the evacuation of our medical research teams. They say 3 of their major hospitals are entirely dependent on human-designed equipment. What does our contract say? Wu Jin asked. It expires in 6 months, along with our lease on the research facility. Then we honor the contract to the letter and leave when it expires. No extensions, no special arrangements. Wu Jin's voice was firm but not angry. We are fulfilling every obligation we made. We're just not making any new ones. This was perhaps the most frustrating thing for the galactic community. Humans weren't breaking their word or abandoning their responsibilities. They were being absolutely perfectly, professionally correct in every interaction. They fulfilled every contract, honored every agreement, and maintained every diplomatic courtesy. They just refused to sign anything new. Meanwhile, in the Deep Space Research Facility orbiting a dead star in the Vega system, Dr. Hunjae Kim was working on humanity's most ambitious project yet. The facility itself was officially listed as a theoretical physics research station, but what they were actually building would change everything. The calculations are solid, she told her team during their daily briefing. The energy requirements are massive, but we can harvest what we need from the stellar remnant. The question is whether the hull can handle the stress of intergalactic transit. Her assistant, Dong-Soo Park, pulled up the engineering schematics. The design is revolutionary. We're essentially building a ship that can travel not just between stars but between galaxies. The aliens have never even considered something like this. Because they never needed to, Hyunjae replied. They have their nice, comfortable galaxy, with established trade routes and diplomatic relationships. We're being forced to think bigger. The ship taking shape in the facility's construction bay was unlike anything in galactic civilization. It was part exploration vessel, part colony ship, and part mobile research station. But most importantly, it was completely independent. It could manufacture its own fuel, grow its own food, and maintain itself indefinitely without any external support. How many more are we building? Asked another team member, Miran Cho. This is just the prototype, Hyunjae smiled. If it works, we'll build 1,000 of them. Back on Earth, Sujin Lee reviewed the progress reports from across human space. The evacuation was ahead of schedule. Human colonies were shutting down and packing up faster than even her most optimistic projections had predicted. But more importantly, they were doing it efficiently. The Gorillans are requesting a meeting, reported Taewon Cho. They're concerned about the economic impact of our withdrawal from the Outer Rim territories. Let me guess, Sujin said. They want us to slow down, maybe extend our timeline? Exactly. They're offering compensation if we'll maintain our mining operations for an additional 2 years. Sujin shook her head. No deals, no extensions, no negotiations. We gave them what they wanted, our departure. Now they get to live with the consequences. She turned to the main display, showing the current status of human evacuation efforts. Green indicators showed colonies that had completed their withdrawal. Yellow showed those currently in process. Red showed the few that were behind schedule. There was a lot more green than anyone had expected. You know what's funny? She said to her assembled staff. They thought they were punishing us. They thought Exile would be our destruction. She gestured to the display. Look at what we've accomplished in just 2 years. We've become more efficient, more self-reliant, more unified than we've ever been. The truth was becoming clear to anyone paying attention. Humanity wasn't collapsing under the pressure of exile. They were thriving. The need to become completely independent had sparked innovations that might have taken decades under normal circumstances. The urgency of evacuation had forced efficiency improvements that were revolutionizing human logistics. And perhaps most importantly, humanity was discovering that they didn't actually need the galactic community as much as they had thought. Status: report on the deep space projects? Sujin asked. All proceeding on schedule, replied Na Young Choi, her science advisor. The prototype intergalactic vessel will be ready for testing within the year. The Void Habitat project is showing promising results, and our resource extraction operations are proving that we can be completely self-sufficient. Sujin nodded, with satisfaction. Good. Because in 3 years, when we make our final departure, I want the galaxy to understand something very clearly. What's that, Director? That they didn't exile us from civilization. They freed us to build our own. 5 years had passed since the exile order, and humanity kept their promise. The last human ship crossed the galactic boundary exactly on schedule, leaving behind empty worlds and silent space stations. But those expecting humanity to retreat to Earth in defeat were about to discover how wrong they had been. Admiral So Young Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, humanity's new flagship, watching as the galaxy shrank behind them. Ahead lay only the black void between galaxies, a region that most species considered impossible to cross. But humans had never been ones to accept impossible as a final answer. Navigation report, she called to her bridge crew. We are now officially in intergalactic space, replied Lieutenant Commander Jin-Soo Kim. All fleet elements are maintaining formation. 1,200,000 ships reporting ready for Operation Deep Void. So Young allowed herself a moment of pride. Humanity had built the largest fleet in galactic history, and they had done it in just 5 years. Every ship was a masterpiece of engineering, designed for complete independence and equipped with technologies that surpassed anything the galactic community possessed. Communications, open a channel to all fleet elements. Channel open, Admiral. So Young took a deep breath. This moment would define humanity's future. This is Admiral Park to all ships. Today we begin the greatest journey in human history. We leave behind a galaxy that feared us and we go forward to discover what lies beyond. We carry with us the hopes and dreams of our entire species. We will not just survive in the void, we will thrive. The response came back as a chorus from 1,000,000 ships. We are humanity. We endure. We adapt. We overcome. In the engineering section of the Eternal Dawn, Chief Engineer Dong Hyun Yoon monitored the systems that made this incredible journey possible. The ship's fusion reactors drew power from hydrogen collected from the sparse matter between galaxies. Its manufacturing bays could create anything needed for survival or expansion. Its hydroponic farms could feed the crew indefinitely. Status on the resource collectors? He asked his team. Operating at peak efficiency, reported Senior Engineer Hae Young Park. We're actually collecting more raw materials from void space than we anticipated. Hydrogen, helium, trace metals from ancient supernovas. It's all out here, just spread very thin. And the manufacturing systems? Running constantly. We're producing everything from spare parts to new shuttlecraft. At current rates, we could build another ship this size within 2 years using only materials harvested from empty space. Dong Hyun nodded with satisfaction. This was the crucial innovation that made humanity's exodus possible. While other species saw the void between galaxies as empty death, humans had learned to harvest its hidden wealth. 50 light-years ahead of the main fleet, Commander Jin Woo Lee's ship, the Pioneer's Dream, was establishing humanity's first permanent foothold in intergalactic space. The massive construction project taking shape around a lonely brown dwarf star would have seemed impossible to any galactic civilization. Foundation anchors are secured, reported his construction chief, Eugene Seo. We can begin assembly of the primary habitat ring. The habitat they were building was enormous, large enough to house 1,000,000 people in comfort, but more than just a home. It was designed to be completely self-sufficient and capable of expansion. It would serve as a way station for other human fleets and a manufacturing base for further expansion. What's our timeline for basic habitability? Jin Woo asked. 6 months for the first ring to be pressurized and life-supporting. Another year for full construction. But we'll be ready to receive the main fleet when they arrive. Jin Woo walked to the observation deck and looked out at the construction. Hundreds of work pods moved around the growing structure like busy insects, their occupants building humanity's first home in the vast emptiness. It was a testament to human determination and ingenuity. Meanwhile, exploration ships had fanned out in all directions, making discoveries that astounded even veteran space travelers. Captain Na Young Cho commanded the Deep Range, one of the fastest ships in the human fleet, designed for long-range reconnaissance. "Captain," called her science officer, Sang-Woo Lee, "you need to see this." On the main screen appeared something that shouldn't exist according to galactic science, a structure floating in the void, clearly artificial but built by no known species. "It's massive," whispered Navigator Yoonji Kim, "at least 50 kilometers long. But there's no energy signature, no life signs. It's been here for millions of years." Na Young leaned forward in her command chair. "Take us closer. And prepare. A boarding party. If there's ancient technology out here, humanity needs to understand it." What they found inside the derelict changed everything. The builders had been a species that existed long before the current galactic civilizations. And they had faced the same problem humanity now confronted: exile from their home galaxy. But instead of just surviving, they had thrived, building a network of installations across multiple galaxies. "The data banks are mostly corrupted," reported Chief Science Officer Min Jae Park. "But what we can read suggests they called themselves the Wanderers. They were forced to leave their galaxy due to a war that consumed their entire civilization." "What happened to them?" Na Young asked. "Unknown. But these installations exist across 17 different galaxies. They built an empire that spanned distances the current galactic powers can't even imagine." Back with the main fleet, Dr. Hyun-jae Kim was analyzing the data from the Deep Range when she made a connection that sent chills down her spine. The Wanderers hadn't just built an intergalactic civilization. They had evolved beyond the need for planets or stars. They had become something that existed purely in the void between galaxies. "Admiral," she contacted So Young urgently, "I think I understand what happened to the Wanderers. They didn't disappear. They transcended. Exile forced them to evolve beyond anything the galaxy-bound species could imagine." So Young studied the data carefully. "Are you suggesting that exile might be the best thing that ever happened to humanity?" "I'm saying that every species that achieves true greatness probably goes through this phase. They get rejected by the status quo, forced to find their own path, and in doing so become something far greater than they could have been as part of the established order." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't being punished. They were being graduated to a higher level of existence. The galaxy had unknowingly given them the push they needed to become something unprecedented. As the human fleet continued its journey into the void, reports came in from other exploration teams. They had found 3 more galaxies within reasonable travel distance. One contained primitive civilizations that hadn't yet achieved spaceflight. Another held a galaxy-spanning empire that made the Galactic Council look like a neighborhood committee. The third was entirely uninhabited but rich with resources and suitable worlds. "Status report from all departments," So Young requested during the daily fleet briefing. "All ships operational," reported Fleet Engineering. "We're actually running more efficiently than when we started. The void environment is ideal for our systems." "Construction of Way Station Alpha proceeding ahead of schedule," added Fleet Construction. "We'll have a fully operational deep space city within the year." "Contact protocols established with the Andromeda Confederation," reported Fleet. "Diplomacy. They're very interested in trade relationships. They've never seen technology like ours. Resource extraction exceeding all projections," concluded Fleet Science. "We're harvesting more raw materials from empty space than we ever extracted from planetary mining operations." So Young looked around at her senior staff. seeing the same realization in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Humanity wasn't just surviving in exile, they were becoming something the galaxy could never have imagined. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said quietly, "I think we need to face a startling truth. The Galactic Council didn't exile us from civilization. They freed us to build something far better. 5 years ago, humanity had been one species among many, in a crowded galaxy, struggling for recognition and acceptance. Now they were the masters of the void between worlds, with access to multiple galaxies and technologies beyond galactic comprehension. The exile had indeed transformed them, but not in the way the Council had intended. They had become something greater than anyone had ever imagined possible." The message arrived through official channels for the first time in 8 years. Councillor Vexhari of the Galactic Council, speaking on behalf of 47 member species, formally requested an audience with humanity's leadership. The exile, it seemed, was no longer working as intended. Admiral Sujin Lee, now Director of Humanity's Intergalactic Affairs, read the message in her office aboard Waystation Alpha, humanity's first permanent city in the void between galaxies. Through the massive observation windows, she could see the bustling activity of the station. Ships arriving from 7 different galaxies, construction crews expanding the habitat rings, and research vessels departing for distant cosmic phenomena. "They want to negotiate," she said to her assembled staff. "Formal reinstatement into galactic civilization, with improved terms and enhanced recognition of human contributions." Captain Jae Sung Park, commander of the exploration vessel New Horizon, leaned back in his chair. 8 years too late for that conversation, wouldn't you say? "Read them the statistics," suggested Dr. Yan Su Jung, humanity's chief xenobiologist and cultural analyst. Sujin activated the holographic display that dominated the center of the conference room. "In the 8 years since exile, humanity has established permanent colonies in 4 different galaxies. We've made first contact with 47 new civilizations. We've developed technology that exceeds galactic standards by orders of magnitude. We've built an intergalactic trade network that spans distances the Galactic Council can't even imagine." The numbers were staggering. Humanity's population had grown by 2 billion people, all living in space habitats and planetary colonies scattered across multiple galaxies. Their industrial output exceeded what they had achieved as part of galactic civilization. Their scientific advancement had accelerated beyond all projections. "Most importantly," Sujin continued, "we've done all of this without a single conflict, without conquering anyone, without imposing our will on other species. We've become exactly what the galaxy claimed to want, a peaceful, cooperative, advanced civilization. We just did it somewhere else." The irony was profound. The Galactic Council had exiled humanity for being too aggressive and unpredictable. In response, humanity had built a civilization based on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit, spanning multiple galaxies and including dozens of species that had never even heard of the Galactic Council. "So what do we tell them?" asked Commander Min-Soo Kim, leader of humanity's diplomatic corps. Sujin was quiet for a long moment, considering the response that would shape the future of multiple civilizations. "We tell them the truth. We're no longer interested in being members of their galaxy. We've found something better." The response she drafted was polite but final. Humanity thanked the Galactic Council for their invitation, but respectfully declined to rejoin galactic civilization. They had evolved beyond the need for acceptance from their former neighbors. But Sujin went further than simple refusal. She included an offer that stunned the galactic community. "However," her message continued, "humanity is willing to establish formal diplomatic and trade relations with the galaxy, as equals rather than members. We propose the creation of an intergalactic cooperation network that would allow for voluntary collaboration between our civilization and yours." The offer was revolutionary. Instead of rejoining the galaxy as a member species, humanity was proposing to treat the entire galaxy as a single entity among many in a much larger cosmic community. When the message reached the Galactic Council, the reaction was immediate and profound. Counselor Vexhari stood before the emergency assembly, her translated voice carrying undertones of disbelief. Humanity has declined our offer of reinstatement, she announced. Furthermore, they have proposed that we join them in an intergalactic cooperation network as equal partners in a civilization that spans multiple galaxies. The chamber erupted in confusion. Prime Minister Zethtok of the Velkari demanded clarification. Are they suggesting that our entire galaxy should become a member of their civilization? That appears to be exactly what they're suggesting, Vexhari replied. They're treating our entire galactic civilization as equivalent to a single member species in their larger community. High Scholar Mordan of the Thessians was the first to grasp the implications. They're not offering to rejoin us. They're offering to let us join them. The power dynamic has completely reversed. The data that accompanied humanity's message made the situation even clearer. Human civilization now controlled resources equivalent to dozens of galaxies. Their technology allowed for instantaneous communication across intergalactic distances. Their ships could travel between galaxies as easily as the Council's ships traveled between star systems. Most shocking of all, humanity was just one leading member of their intergalactic cooperation network. The Andromeda Confederation, the Spiral, Collective, the Void Shepherds, and 17 other advanced civilizations had joined humanity's network as equal partners. Together, they represented a cosmic community that dwarfed the Galactic Council's civilization. We need to understand what happened, demanded the Gorillian representative, beating his massive fists in agitation. How did the species we exiled become more powerful than our entire galaxy? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Na Young Cho, conducting a routine survey mission in the galactic border regions, detected a transmission that wasn't meant for human ears. It was a message from the Thessian Science Council to their field researchers, containing an analysis that explained everything. The humans appear to have achieved what we now classify as a transcendence event, the transmission read. Exile forced them to develop technologies and social structures that surpass anything we considered possible. They have evolved beyond planetary civilization, beyond galactic civilization, into something we might call cosmic civilization. The report continued with details that humbled the galaxy's greatest scientists. Human habitat technology allows them to live permanently in the void between galaxies, harvesting energy and resources from cosmic phenomena. Their social organization has eliminated the territorial conflicts that limit other species' expansion. Their scientific method has produced advances that suggest they may soon transcend physical limitations entirely. Su Jin received Captain Na Young's report with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. They're finally beginning to understand what they lost when they exiled us. Do you think they'll accept our offer? Asked Dr. Jung. Some of them will, Su Jin replied. The practical species, the ones focused on advancement and prosperity, but the others, the ones who voted for our exile out of fear and prejudice, they'll reject it. They'd rather decline into irrelevance than admit they were wrong. Her prediction proved accurate. Within months, 17 species had formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council to join humanity's intergalactic cooperation network. The Thessians came first, desperate to rejoin the community of scientific advancement. The Velkari followed, bringing their industrial capacity and trade expertise. Even some of the Gorillans joined, recognizing that their military might could serve a greater purpose in humanity's peacekeeping forces. But 23 species remained with the Galactic Council, led by the more conservative and prideful civilizations that refused to acknowledge their mistake. They retreated into isolationism, maintaining that exile had been the correct decision and that humanity's success was somehow illegitimate. The galaxy split. Progressive species joined humanity's cosmic civilization and thrived. Conservative species remained in the old galactic system and slowly declined. It's exactly what we expected, Su Jin observed during a staff meeting. Exile didn't just transform humanity, it revealed the true character of every species in the galaxy. Some are capable of growth and adaptation. Others are trapped by their own fear and pride. Looking out at the bustling activity of Waystation Alpha, now expanded into a massive metropolis housing millions of beings from dozens of species, Sujin reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. 8 years ago, they had been exiled as a dangerous and unpredictable species. Now they were the leaders of an intergalactic civilization based on cooperation, innovation, and voluntary association. The galaxy's attempt to contain them had instead unleashed their potential to transform the universe itself. The exile had indeed been the best thing that ever happened to humanity. And for those species wise enough to join them, it would prove to be the best thing that ever happened to them as well.